Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thank you for joining us to First Wednesdays for Business. My name is Jennifer Burns. I'm the director of the Business Insight Center at the Central Library of Rochester and Monroe County. We are available to assist you with any business-related research, whether you need to see what a business plan looks like, or you already have an existing company and you want to grow that and find new customers, or find out who your local competition is. We are by appointment only, and we will be putting that information into the chat so you can learn how to get in touch with us. We're appointment only because we're not always there. We don't want you to show up and there won't be anyone there to help you out. So just housekeeping, please keep yourself muted and put all questions into the chat. I will be moderating the chat. And without further ado, let's introduce our fantastic speaker from the Small Business Development Center, Gina. Gina,
good morning. Hi, everybody. It's wonderful to have you all join us this morning. I'm excited about this topic and hope that you benefit a lot from it. But before we get started, I want to introduce a little bit more about the SBDC. And first to introduce our Regional Director, Jan Pazanchen, who's been heading up the center since 1999. We are the SUNY Brockport Small Business Development Center, and we actually are funded in 3 different ways. We're SUNY Brockport because they're our host. We have funding from the Small Business Administration and from New York State. And we've been around since 1984. And when I ask my clients, have you ever heard of us? The answer is usually no, which is disturbing because we've been around a long time, assisting entrepreneurs and giving them a lot of resources, helping them with every aspect of business from inception to sale. And we are here right now. We're working remotely from home, and we use Zoom and telephone to host our meetings with our clients. But our center is staffed. We have 9 people that work at the center. We have certified business advisors. And I think that it's a resource that is underutilized by a lot of people thinking to start a small business. So the kinds of things that we focus on as one, to educate you on business entrepreneurship. We advocate, for example, if you're looking for funding with a bank, we can help you with all the requirements there and help to advocate for that. And we assist you with whatever the needs are that you have. So the Small Business Development Center is here for you to take advantage of. It is free and confidential. It does not cost you anything. It's prepaid because it's paid through your tax dollars. So as we go through this presentation, I'd like you to consider the resources that we have in conjunction with what the library provides. And also know that we do these first Wednesdays every year from September to June. And the programs are great with terrific speakers and topics. And all we ask in return when you attend our workshops is that you respond to the survey that you will receive under a separate email after the presentation. So kind of make a note to yourself that you will get a survey in the mail, and that we would like you to respond to that survey. And one question in particular is, what kinds of topics would you like to see presented through the SBDC in conjunction with the library? And give us some of your ideas about maybe things that you're not so familiar with, or things that that you saw someplace else and would like to be able to have us present that for you. So keep us in mind. We are the SUNY Brockport Small Business Development Center. We do have an office on campus, but our main downtown office is on the 6th floor of the MCC downtown campus. And you can still reach us in the normal way. And I have that information at the end. So with that, let me get started with Dating with Entrepreneurship. Hope you love that title. And it came to me this way because of the fact that when you're in a relationship, you typically have, when you're in a business startup, you're starting with a business relationship on a number of levels. So we think about things like, what are you a match for? Most people, when they want to get started in business, say, oh, I've always wanted a coffee shop, or, I'm a needle crafter and I think I'd like to have an Etsy shop, or my father had a tool and die shop. I really enjoyed that, so maybe I'll start that. The bottom line is that you need to make a match between what your skill set is and what you could think of in terms of turning it into a business. Sometimes hobbies become businesses. But today I really want to explore some of those basic startups that you need to talk about. All of the topics that I could go over today could literally take up an entire one-day workshop. So we're going to hit on the top cylinders today on some of the basics that you need to know, but understand that you can come to the SBDC and we can help fill in those blanks as you get started. So in thinking about starting that business and making a match, we want you to understand the business of startup, what's involved. And we also want you to understand why business startup is like dating, because there's a lot of unknowns. It could be considered like a blind date because you don't know what you're stepping into, what the journey is going to look like. And it does involve a relationship between you and where there's a need. So these relationships will be with your customers. You'll have vendors, you'll have a relationship with vendors, a banker, an accountant, possibly a lawyer. And it's your relationship to understanding the need that you're trying to fulfill. And I think that that's one of the basic premises of business entrepreneurship, is that you're either going to fill a need or something that is there right now. You think you can do better, build a better mousetrap. And so we're going to try to explore some of that. So the topics that I'm looking to cover today is, I want to talk about how to determine what kind of business to start. So I think ideas need to be explored. What is the structure of your business? What are those entity options that you need to consider? How do you create that top level concept, kind of sketch of your business through a business model canvas? And how does that become articulated in a written business plan? Developing your strategy both for success and for tragedy. We've all been following the pandemic of 2020. We have heard about the 13% loss of small business that we've experienced across this country due to shutdowns and people unprepared. In a lot of cases, I've had clients through this pandemic that flourished and did triple the business, and some of them didn't last 2 weeks, and it's really rooted in preparedness. So I'm going to stress some of that through this conversation today as well. We're going to take a look at raising capital and funding your startup. What are some of the sources? What are the credit issues that we need to take a look at that we call the 5 C's of credit? And quite honestly, it's not always possible to get the funding in the way that you want for the amount that you want. So what would be next? If I can't get it through a bank, what are some of the other resources? And then finally, just kind of a list of things that you can lean on that will help you in that journey. So let's get started. And I want to start with your business idea. Now, if you're on this call today, if you're watching this presentation, then it's because you have some kind of an idea of what you'd like to consider in starting your own business. So you have to ask some questions about things like, what's missing, in my regional area? What's missing in general that I could fulfill a need for? Could I do something better? Where's the need? What could I do in a better way? Who else wants it? And anyone that's counseled with me knows that I have 3 important questions that I need them to answer based on your business concept and idea. Number 1, who wants it? Who's looking for what you offer? Why do they want it? So what need are you filling? What are the things that they're yearning for? And more importantly, why would they want it from you? What are you going to bring to the table that's going to help them, help you envision an idea so that you can answer those 3 questions? And I would like you to really write those down. Who wants it? Why do they want it? And why do they want it from you? When you can answer those 3 questions, you've stepped off in the right direction. So let's look at some examples of what those ideas have given us. So as you know, we've all probably seen an elder that was maybe in a wheelchair on oxygen, very cumbersome to drag that tank around. Somebody looked at that and said, we need something better. This is cumbersome. It's a little dangerous. What could we do? And so on the right-hand side of that second picture, you see someone carrying a device that creates the oxygen from the air around them. That's an improvement. That's pretty good. So that would be an entrepreneurial idea that someone went forward with, and it's doing quite well. The second idea, now I want you to be aware that about 7.3 million pounds of ground coffee. So when you make your coffee in the morning and you take the filter and you throw it in the basket, know that you in the metropolitan area in Rochester deposits 7.3 million pounds of that spent coffee ground and chaff every year in our landfill. Well, we have a client that saw this and came up with a better idea, how to upcycle that so that it could become biofuel. And so he takes those coffee grounds, reduces it to 11% moisture, and comes up with pellets like you see on the left-hand side of that picture. The other thing he does is he creates these briquettes. And this right here is what you get when he processes the spent chaff and coffee grounds, which you reconstitute and can be used in soil as a nitrogen supplement. So it's helping in a number of ways, returning it to the soil because it's rich in nitrogen, helps flourishing plants and flowers. It takes it out of the landfill, and it gives us a way to heat our homes in a biofuel way that actually the ash, once it's burned, is also very nutritious to the soil. So, here's one way that one person looked at the idea and was able to make something better with these ideas. Another one that's been great, I don't know if you ever saw this on Shark Tank, but the video Doorbell has taken off, really just absolutely viral. While it's great to have your doorbell and a peephole, you still have to be home. And the entrepreneur that took charge of this understood that I'm not always home. I'm off to the soccer field with my kids. I'm at work. I'm at the grocery store. So if someone rings my doorbell, I don't have any idea that they did or who they are, but now I can with video doorbell. This device is affordable and is a great idea and a tremendous improvement over what we had been using. So these are examples of ideas that have been developed that answer a need or improve something, and that's what you're called to do. You are called to ask those questions and see if what you're proposing as a business startup is going to be something that someone needs or an improvement. So how do we think about this? Yeah.
Can we just, we have a question in the chat of, can the SBDC advise on not-for-profit startups? If not, who can?
Jan, do you want to answer that?
Okay, let me unmute myself first before I start blathering. Yes, we can help, but realistically, we always refer nonprofits to accountants and attorneys who have experience because it's more of an issue of making sure that the structure is sound from a tax standpoint and that you're not attracting attention of the IRS. So if you have a profit motive behind it, that kind of throws a question up there as well with the IRS. Are you really nonprofit? Are you making money? And we do get a lot of calls from people who ask us about, gee, I'm going to start this nonprofit and we're going to make this amount of money. That's not how nonprofits are supposed to work. So
yeah,
we can, but we tend to stay away from it because, again, it's a tax-related issue.
We have also, Sue, we have a lot of information on how to start a nonprofit at the Central Library. And we have access to the Foundation Center database, which is where you can identify grant funding and search by specific areas of interest or, initiatives. So you could also start there at the Central Library. You do need to have your 501(c) status prior to applying for those grants, but we can work with you on how to get around that for now, if you do want to do some fundraising, but you can contact me for more information.
That's great. I didn't even realize that you did that, Jen. That's great. So where we were was thinking about how to develop a business concept to start a business with. Sometimes it's hard to think about. You may have a particular area of interest and need some kind of structure to just think about what would make it better and so on. In a book called Thinker Tools, there's this model called the Scamper model. And what this does is give you just ideas about taking something and either substitute, creating a substitute for it or combining it with something else. The scamper model is just an acronym for substitute, combine, adapt, modify, put to another use, eliminate, or reverse. So when I think about Bean to Green and their coffee chafe product, that's taking a spent product that's normally waste and putting it to another use. Modifying. Okay, I think that the doorbell concept was modified with the doorbell, the video doorbell. Adapting things. Maybe it's taking something away. So I would encourage you to think about using this scamper model as a way to think through what your business concept is and ways that maybe you can refine it so that it breeds more success than what you may have originally thought. So now let's get into it a little bit. Opening a new business can mean opening yourself up to liability. It's important that you assess the potential losses that you may experience if you open a business, and also in choosing an entity that can either help you mitigate that liability or in some cases could hurt you. So with a new business, we need to take a look at how to mitigate risk with using entity options. Most people, when I get into a conversation with them about business startup, they will say to me, oh, I already filed my DBA. And they haven't really given any thought that there's other entities that you can do. Some people think you file them all. So one of the resources at the SBDC, we can help you navigate how to make that decision. But more importantly, we want you to think it through based on the things that are in your life right now. Do you own a home? Have you got a boat? Do you have bank accounts with cash? Do you have investments? Do you own any intellectual property? What are the things that are on the asset side of your personal balance sheet that could be at risk if someone were to sue you due to a business problem? Okay. Now let's take a look at the different types of business organizations that entities that you can engage in. All right. Sole proprietor is probably the most common that people know about. That requires going down to the county clerk, filing your DBA certificate with a business name, and now you're in business doing business as not your legal name, but maybe a business name like Mike's Bike Shop or Jennifer's piano tuning service. It could be anything, but all it is an AKA. And they take that DBA and they publish it in the paper so that the general public knows that, let's say, Gina Mangiamelli is now doing business as Gina's Photography, so that they understand that you're using a different name other than the name yourself. Now, that does not prohibit you from using your own name, your own social security number to perform business transactions that could still go on a Schedule C and be filed with your taxes. That could include things like my piano tuner, who just uses his own name and his own social security number, records his transactions, and files his taxes appropriately. Doesn't need a separate name. There's tutors, personal trainers. A lot of people just use it in that way. But if you want a business name and you want to associate it like Mike's Bike Shop, then a DBA would be necessary. But understand, when you do that, that sole proprietorship does not allow you any protection. There's no real separation between your business and your personal life. It is simple to start. It's inexpensive and rather informal. It means that your sole ownership, if you're a service, there's nothing really to transfer. If you sell the business, then you're usually selling any equipment or maybe a list of customers, things like that. You do have personal liability for all business debt, and that could be problematic. I mean, think about what happened in 2020 with all of these businesses that, were shut down, couldn't operate, couldn't pay their bills. If they were just a sole proprietorship, that responsibility continues. That business debt is on them. Profit and loss is reported on a Schedule C and transferred to your personal tax return. So the taxes that you pay, your self-employment tax and all that, is calculated with the Schedule C and the individual tax 1040. So sole proprietorship, while it's simple and easy, it may not necessarily be what it is you should be starting your business as. And I'll give you a good example. About a year ago now, in February, Mr. Tom Golisano launched his book, Built, Not Born. And in chapter 2 of that book, he talks about how he started his original company, which was called Paymaster, at the county clerk's office with a simple DBA. And all his intention was at that time was to get 300 customers and make enough money so he could support his disabled child at home. That's what he writes about in the book. He also writes that he wished he had a little longer vision of where he thought this company could go, because if he'd have thought about it longer, he'd have picked a corporation from the beginning, because he just didn't realize where this thing could take off. So I encourage you to kind of think long term before you choose an entity, to really understand what you're thinking, how this concept may take off. I can tell you that when Golisano started Paymaster, he had no idea he'd be a multi-billion-dollar company, decades later. So in the book, he talks about discontinuing the DBA. Then some people wanted to start franchising. He ended up pulling that back. And then they convened the company as a corporation, and they called it Paychecks. That's a great book, by the way. It's a simple read. Has a lot of good insight in there into the life and times of Paychecks, and would encourage you to maybe take a look at that. And maybe the library has it on the shelf. Maybe you could take it out. So sole proprietorship is one entity that you can use depending on the risk involved. You may want to do a sole proprietorship, or you may want to choose something else. Along the lines of sole proprietorship, if two people want to come together, same type of thing, two people can file for a partnership at the county. But keep in mind one other thing. A lot of people think that when you file that DBA, my business name is mine. And it is, right up to the county line. So if you file in Monroe County, your business name would be protected within the county. But I could come to Ontario County, file the same thing at my county clerks. So there isn't any business name protection throughout the state when you file a partnership or a DBA. So that's another consideration. Corporations are an entity unto themselves. I think of them as an artificial individual. Why? Because corporations can pretty much do anything people can do except vote and have children. So corporations are separate and apart. They're entities unto themselves, and creates a clear corporate veil of protection, a clear separation between the individual ownership and that owner's personal life. And corporations used to be very expensive. I can remember back in 1982, a friend of mine's husband started a corporation. It cost him $10,000 for the lawyer to actually file the corporate charter and give him his stamp and his black book and all that stuff. That's huge. But now it's fortunately much more affordable than that. And if you're considering a corporation, then you also need to consider delving a little bit more into the structure, because a corporation, C Corp in New York State, is a more complex structure. It costs more for sure. It is a separate legal entity from its owners. It can be a for-profit or a not-for-profit. There's dual taxation though with C corporations, all right? So when a corporation earns money, pays its expenses, and has a net profit, that net profit will have a tax, all right, as a C corporation. And then they pay the tax on that. And if there's a distribution, then the owner has to pay tax again on their individual tax return. It is subject to licensing and regulatory compliance. It issues stock certificates that are transferable. And this is one of the advantages over sole proprietorship or partnership, is the fact that you have something of substance. Somebody invests money, you get stock, that is transferable. So if I sell the business, I can transfer that stock. The stockholders are not personally liable. There's an election of officers and directors. They hold annual meetings, sometimes monthly or quarterly, and they have to record the minutes to their meetings to keep track of what the entity is doing. Now, because of that double taxation problem, back in 1986, they had the Tax Reform Act, which allowed corporations under Chapter S of the Internal Revenue Code to be able to flow that net income to their individual tax return, thus ultimately eliminating that double taxation problem. It is still a domestic business structure. It's more complex than a sole proprietorship. The cost is the same as a C Corp. You basically establish your C corporation and then make a subchapter S election through the Internal Revenue Service. And that taxation flows through to your individual tax return, that 1040. It's a single class of stock certificates that are issued, and the shares are limited to 100 shares, but they are transferable. Stockholders are still not personally liable. They do elect officers and hold annual meetings and keep minutes and operate the same as a regular C corporation, but they have the tax advantage thanks to the 1986 Tax Reform Act. The other option that many people, it's amazing to me when they get into conversation with me about their business. I actually had one person tell me they filed their DBA and an LLC just to be safe. That's what they told me. I wanted to be safe, so I did the DBA in the county, and then I also filed the LLC. Not necessary. Like a corporation, once you're filed in the state, you have statewide protection and recognition and compliance, regulatory compliance. With a limited liability company, you have similar things. Now, where the corporate veil of protection eliminates that personal liability as a corporation, the limited liability company, which came into effect in October of 1995, is actually one that does exactly what it says. It limits liability to the owner. It is filed within the state residency, and instead of corporate papers, you have articles of organization, which are required. Once you have those articles of organization developed, then you have to publish them in weekly newspaper for 6 weeks and a daily newspaper for 6 weeks. And that's, again, similar to the DBA, for public disclosure. People have to know what you're doing, and they have to know how to reach out to you if there is a problem. All of these can be searched on the database through the Department of State as well. So the limited liability company, the LLC, operates to limit liability of the owner. So if you essentially start your business with $2,500 of investment, personal cash investment, technically you're supposed to be limited to any lawsuit, that any liability would be limited to that $2,500. Now there's insurance, there's other types of ways that through layering that you can protect yourself, but technically the limited liability company is intended to just put a cap on what that liability could represent. There is an operating agreement that's required. And like the subchapter S corporation, the taxes for your net income, that net income flows through to your 1040 tax return, and you pay the tax on your individual tax return. Ownership is represented as memberships, and it is transferable. So if you own a limited liability company and you want to transfer that membership, you can do that because it's a tangible entity, unlike a sole proprietorship, which basically requires a discontinuation.
Hey, Gina, we have a question from Fred. Which business entity would protect the business name across county lines since a DBA would not?
An LLC or a C corporation with a subchapter S election, anything that's filed with the Department of State would give you that statewide protection. Does that help? The thing with DBAs, it's just, your county of resident. You're just filing an AKA. It's more important if you're legitimately launching a business that you have long-term plans for. I think an LLC is a pretty common, inexpensive way. I think the cost is $258 to file the LLC. There's an LLC wizard on the Business Express website in New York State under the Department of State with a lot of resources there. I would not recommend that unless you had a lawyer writing shotgun, at least to have an attorney review your documents and the filing to make sure that all the I's were dotted and all the T's were crossed, to have a legal mind review it. Because think about this, if you file it yourself and just save some money, let's say, and then you get sued, and in a court of law, the the person suing you says, well, I'm going to research this form of organization, this entity, to make sure that it's legitimate. And like in a corporation, if you don't hold your board meetings or keep your minutes, they can do what's called piercing the corporate veil. Or in this case with an LLC, they can discredit the LLC and say, we're not giving you that protection. And the court could say that and hold you personally liable. So it's really, really important that if you're not a lawyer, that you get legal assistance in helping you with forming organizations, what entity you choose, because you need it done right. And you need it done professionally. And while the resources are on the Department of State website to perhaps file it yourself, I would definitely say have someone work with you on that is an attorney or even a paralegal, someone that can help you along the way, because you don't want to be caught up in a problem down the road because something wasn't done properly. So to protect your name across the state, a C corporation, a C corp with a subchapter S, or a limited liability company. Now you see the LLC at the top here. That's limited liability company. There can also be a limited liability partnership where 2 or more people gather. And I've had recently 2 or 3 physicians that are starting their own practices, and their choice of entity is going to be a professional, which means they're licensed, professional limited liability partnership. So these entities are here for a reason, to provide some relief on liability, and would encourage you to learn more about them and maybe to consult with an attorney on what would be based on your own asset value, what your net worth and all of that, what's at risk, assess it, and then figure out which one is the best entity for you to choose.
Hey,
So,
Gina, we've got another great question. Are annual meetings required with minutes for an LLC?
No. Limited liability company is a completely different structure than a corporation. And again, a corporation is like an artificial individual. It's a completely embodiment in and of itself. It's a very strong entity. And so the rules and the regulatory compliance requirements for a corporation are different than a limited liability company because of the way they function. But I can tell you that, where you have, let's say 4 people within an LLC, and it's not a sole owner LLC would file a Schedule C, but where you have more than 2, 3, or 4 in an LLC, they can actually operate under that kind of corporate structure, that kind of thing. So it's up to you. You're going to assess what you have. You're going to discern and decide what kind of entity shall I be. And then once you've done that, you've got some feet on the ground to really move forward with the planning stages of your business, because now you can plan based on what entity you've chosen, the kinds of things you're going to need to do in order to get this business going. And so this picture is my ideal. I would love to see every client do this. I ask my clients to dedicate one area in their house that's like their war room, where they're going to do their planning, keep their notes, work on their business. And I love the concept of painting a wall with whiteboard paint and getting your concepts visually in front of you, timelines, ideas and things. I just think it keeps you focused and keeps things in front of you. Planning is essential. And one of the things about planning is that you need to start with a sketch in order to be able to really comprehend what it is you want to set out to do. Now, this slide right here is about the business model canvas, and it breaks it down into 9 blocks that ask you to fill in information so that you have sort of a 10,000-foot view of what does this business concept look like. If I'm going to be a corporation, what is the business I'm doing, and what are the areas that I need to look at? So the canvas really gives you an opportunity to investigate and document things like, what is your customer segment? Maybe you're selling art. Maybe you're a great photographer and you want to sell art, your photography as art. And knowing that you're in, let's say, Canandaigua, it may not sell at the same price as if you were in Los Angeles. So think about, who is my customer segment? I ask my clients to write a profile a word picture of who is going to buy this product, who wants it, and get that customer segment identified. It could be, if I'm selling photography, it could be top IHG or Hilton brand hotels that have a new hotel going up and they need art in their hotel. It could be collectors that love everything New England, but they live in Los Angeles. So writing that customer segment is critical so that you know who you need to message to and who your target market is. And then what channels, how am I going to get there? What are the customer relationships I need to build? Maybe online. What's my value proposition? Who wants it? And then why do they want it? And when we get to why do they want it from you, you need to give them a unique selling proposition as to why you are the one that they should be buying it from. Okay. In some cases, it may be that I'm the only one doing it. Like I can tell you right now, Bean to Green, they're the only ones doing this in Western New York. So there's a value proposition right there. What are the activities you'll participate in? What are the resources that I need? If I were to start a business, I think the first thing I'd want to do is really take a look at everything that would be at my disposal. Small Business Development Center, the library. How about the New York Public Library? Do you know anybody can belong to the New York Public Library? They have online business and industry resources that just don't quit. They're wonderful. We have, Greater Rochester Enterprise. We have NextCore. We have SCORE. We have so many resources for small business in this area and across the country that it's really foolish to think you need to go it alone, because you don't. So figure out where those resources are. And then what partners do you need? You need a banker, an accountant, lawyer, maybe an insurance guy. Maybe I need a graphic designer. Maybe I need to hook up with somebody on Fiverr who can develop my logo. What are the partnerships that you need to develop? And then what is it going to cost you to start up? And what would the cost of operation be? That's where SBDC comes in. We can help you with that. And then what are your revenue streams? Where is the money going to come in from? And when I think about revenue stream, I think multiple income generators, more than one place. People who survived the pandemic, their businesses, it's because they were able to capitulate and generate different streams of income based on what their operation is already doing. So maybe I'm a garment company, but now I'm making face masks. Okay. Maybe I'm Ford and I make certain parts, or GM. Now I'm making ventilators. You've got to be able to imagine multiple places where you can generate money to come in. And I'm going to tell you, this is really important because when we take a look at why businesses fail, of the businesses that do fail, 82% of those businesses fail because of a lack of cash flow. They don't have the money coming in. Once that income stream is chopped off and I have no place else to get it, then I'm out of business. So the Small Business Administration, their Office of Advocacy, put out a bunch of statistics, and it was kind of telling. 82% failed of the failures, 82% of them fail because of a lack of cash. So understanding your revenue stream, calculating where it's going to come from, how many different places can you take the same thing of what you're doing and generate different income. I can tell you, Bean to Green, they're doing these for nutritional supplements. They make the pellets for pellet stoves for biofuel heating. They have grilling pellets that are specialty pellets that can go in your grill to really, they burn hot, so you can really get a nice sizzle on a steak. And also, being able to use that product in bulk, let's say for mushroom farmers. So you have to think about that. That's a really important thing. Don't be so narrow and so deep that you don't give yourself the flexibility to generate that revenue. So this business model canvas, by the way, SBDC has a tool that's called Entree Skills. And Entree Skills is an online 40-hour, 17 module platform where you can go in and you can do the entire training. Okay. But more importantly, it has module 17, which is the business model canvas. Not only will it give you a place to use it as a canvas, but it will also teach you how to use it. Now, originally, EntreSkills was utilized in the Self-Employment Assistance Program for New York State as a way to complete their entrepreneurial training that was required. But I have to tell you, I give it to almost all of my clients for two reasons. Number one, there's great information and data in there, and it's free to you when you're a client of the SBDC. And secondly, you can use it to create your business model canvas and your business plan. So there's a module in there where it teaches on the business plan. It gives you worksheets and templates to put in the data that's necessary for a business plan. And then you click a tab that says business plan, and it converts to a Word document, and it spits out your draft so that you can continue to work on it. And it's got all the components. Sometimes you can eliminate some of it, but that EntreSkills platform is one of the best tools. It's free to use. You can have it for as long as you need it, want it. And I encourage you that if you want to do this right, if you want to step off correctly in your business, it has all of the components you need, including marketing, finances, choosing your entity option. So this would be a step that you would need to do, is to get your business model canvas done, because the next step is that you need to work on articulating what that plan means in a written business plan. And I'd have to say, you've probably heard this cliche that business don't plan to fail. They typically fail to plan. So they're not doing the right homework before they actually get started, haven't anticipated things, and haven't done the projections necessary. So from there, let's take a look. Now, the business plan has several components to it. And people often say to me, why do I have to write all this? I hate writing. I don't want to do it. Will the SBDC write my business plan for me? Oh, and the answer enthusiastically is no, we're not going to write your business plan. We will read it. We will critique it. We will give you suggestions, but you have to write it. Why? Because it's your business. It's not our business. It's your business. You need to plan it out the way it needs to happen. And you need to articulate it so that the partners that you choose are going to be able to read it as well. So you need it. Your banker may need it. Investors may need it. Realtors, you may not know this, but when you try to go rent commercial property, the realtor is going to ask you for your business plan. Why? Because they want to know that it's legitimate business, that there's probability that you'll make enough money to pay the rent. So that's an essential component. Planning boards. If you're going to, I had a client that converted her garage into a hair salon. She had to go before the planning board. They wanted her business plan, her projections. They wanted to know her estimates on how many customers would be coming in and out. Why? Because the village that she lives in has to pay insurance on the roads and sidewalks. And if you're going to increase traffic, that's going to increase exposure and could increase our premiums. So the board and the government in that village needed to know, what is your plan? The other thing is, if you present your idea to your family, half of them are going to say, you're out of your mind, just go get a job. The other half is going to be interested and say, well, maybe you could make it. But if they all read your business plan and know where you're headed, they may be able to get behind it and say, you know what? I work for an attorney. He might be willing to give you a discount to create the corporation. Or, geez, my husband's a graphic designer. He could help you with something like your logo. All right. So looking at your circle of influence directly into your family, having them read your business plan, making the pitch as to why you think this is going to work. And more importantly, the most important family member is possibly your spouse. If the spouse isn't on board with what you want to do, the business plan and that planning might be enough to convince them to go ahead. I can't tell you how many times I've had the spouse in my office talking to the entrepreneur and his spouse saying things like, well, what are the resources that you could bring to the table? If you're concerned about his success, how could what you know help him? Oh, well, I work in accounting, so I could probably do his books. Well, that would be great engagement. So don't hesitate to write that plan. It doesn't have to be a book. We don't want to read 43-page business plans. We typically look for 12 to 15 pages plus your financials. Okay. So, but do understand this is a task that you really need to do. Get the business model canvas sketched out, and then use it to articulate what this business is going to be and how it drives your success. So when you write the business plan, what you're basically doing is vetting the process to determine the success or possible or probable success. But in that plan, you also have to figure out, what if there's another Hurricane Sandy? What if my building burns down? What would be my plan? What if there's a legislative shutdown that mandates that I can't operate? What would be my plan? What if I have, all kinds of things happen? It could be, we've had earthquakes in New York. We've had tornadoes in New York. Disaster is always going to happen. And the people who made it through this pandemic successfully are the ones who had a plan on what to do when the shutdown happened. They already thought ahead in terms of what that would be. They had step 1, step 2, step 3, and they were successful. One client in particular I have in Canandaigua owns a home decor business. The protocol was to come into her shop, purchase a bunch of craft supplies, and then sit down and have a workshop where she would show you how to create these beautiful home decor items like framed mirrors or, something with a saying on it. And when the pandemic hit and everybody was shut down, her plan said, I'm going to convert and step up and change my website into an e-commerce site. I'm going to go to curbside pickup, and I'm going to learn Zoom in a weekend so that I can host my workshops on Zoom. She did 3 times the business in 2020 over 2019. It's been so successful, primarily because people are stuck at home. They were looking for things to do. She had the insight to understand that. But more importantly, she had a plan. I can't stress enough how important it is that you plan not only for the business you're starting, but what happens in the what ifs. So you have to create that strategy because you need to know how to start and grow and prepare for the unexpected. This way you ensure a feasible recovery and planning. And part of that planning is don't spend all the money that you make, get some money in the bank, because cash is king. And we now know that 82% fail because of not having money to work off of, no working capital. And finally, your plan should also think about, what is the feasible exit strategy? What if I want to get out? I can't tell you how many people started out in business because they wanted a coffee shop or they wanted to sell yarn or whatever the business was, and realizing that converting their hobby into a business, they didn't realize everything that was involved with the bookkeeping and getting to the chamber meetings and all of the hours that are involved, because you have running the business and then you have working on the business. You can work in the business, but you also have to work on the business. And that can take 60 to 70 hours a week when you're in full production, full operation. So you may say to yourself, I built this up. I need to get out. I'm beat. I'm tired. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not what I expected. And having an exit strategy so that you know what you want, how to get out of it. It might be liquidation, but more importantly, we hope you're building some kind of an asset that somebody's going to want to buy. And I think that that's, an important thing to consider. You may get into it and realize, I had no idea what I was getting into. I'm not cut out for this, and I need to get out. So think about that in your planning strategies as well. It's as important as all of this startup. So the audience for these business plans, as I said, are going to be your bankers. If you're going for some type of a business loan, commercial loan, they need to know and determine whether or not, when the underwriter looks at this, is repayment ability probable. Realtors, as I said, look at this so that they can assess whether or not you can afford the property. We have investors. So in a lot of cases, some businesses just don't attract a bank, or it doesn't. And let me just say a little bit about that. When a bank says no, for now, it could be that it's too new, it's a startup, and you might need an investor. It could also be that they don't want that kind of business in their portfolio. You don't take it personally, and you don't, get disrespectful with the bank because they didn't give you your loan. You move on to your plan on perhaps private investors. These private investors will want to take a look at your business model canvas and the details of your business plan to see if there's an ROI, return on investment. Okay, this is important because nobody wants to start a business to fail. And if you're not in business to make a profit, then I say, why? You can't do something with nothing. So when businesses are profitable, they can hire employees and provide employment. They can donate to charities. Okay, so when you see little leaguers and you see all these companies, names on the back of t-shirts that are supporting youth sports, they can't do that if they're strapped for cash. All right, they need to be able to be profitable because then you have the freedom to do with your money what you want and donate. Look at Tom Golisano. He started out as this small DBA, and now he not only has the Golisano Children's Hospital in Rochester, there's one in Florida. He's got a wing out at a community hospital in Syracuse. So when you are profitable, then you're able to help more. You're able to provide employment more. So this notion that it's bad to be profitable is it's just not sound logic, because if you're profitable and you can take the money and do with it as you wish, then you're going to benefit your community. And quite honestly, every entrepreneur that I know that's been successful, you take Randall Chevrolet, in Victor, I live in the Farmington Victor area, all of the small businesses around here are so supportive, and they give and give every single year. So, investors want a return on investment. You need to have a plan that's going to demonstrate how that is. And then again, with government boards, planning boards, and whether it's retail, commercial, industrial boards, government boards also have industrial parks where they might have an appropriate place for you to lease, and so on. So they're going to want to see that plan as well. And as we talked about, the family should get behind you and should be abreast and informed on what your plans are. Okay, so the business plan is all of this. What it is not a creative writing essay. We don't want to read business plans that say, my coffee shop is going to serve the most fantastic coffee all through New York State. No, we want to know very specifically. Think about the business plan as expository writing. If you had to write an essay on how a refrigerator runs, and you had to give parts and information and quantitative data, that's the way the business plan needs to come together. It's going to list facts and details. It's going to identify topics like in a thesis. It's going to exploit and pump up your ideas and give very, like your marketing plan should be very explicit. It should be very detailed. It sorts out the details from the beginning, the middle, and the end, and it provides supportive research and financial data. So in speaking to that, the written part of it, of the business plan, is essential. But what accompanies that plan are the financial projections that show your cash flow anticipated. It shows your profit and loss anticipated 3 to 5 years. All right. It's going to show your expenses. It's going to show where the income's coming in from. And my clients say to me, Gina, but I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know how to figure that out. Well, there's ways to figure that out. For example, we know that the RMA annual studies collects data on all kinds of businesses based on NAICS code and SIC code. And by the way, that's NAICS and SIC. One is the North American Industrial Classification System code. That's like putting a category on an industry. And SIC was the original Standard Industrial Classification System code, that original. Okay, it morphed into NAICS. So you should know what that is. We can obtain the RMA annual studies, and we can look at that to determine, here's what, the annual revenue between small, medium, and large businesses, here's what it kind of represents. So there are ways that we can pull data. We can read reports. We can look at SBA data. We can go to the Census Bureau. All right. The United States Census Bureau has tremendous data. So we try to pull together a basis, what we call the assumptions that we use and we list to say, here's how I came up with these numbers. And we help you with that at the SBDC. Hopefully your head's not exploding yet. These are things that have to be done. And if you're going to go to the bank to understand, what they need, they're going to want to see if it's SBA guaranteed, they're going to want 5 years projections. If it's you got a great credit score and a lot of cash that you can put on deposit, it might only be 3 years. But the bottom line is you've got to show the numbers. It's got to be quantified. They have to make sense. We have to know where the assumptions came from, and we have to know sources and uses. How much money do you need? How much are you putting in? Don't ever expect to walk into a bank and have them finance 100% of your business. Not happening. If you don't have skin in the game, that means you don't have confidence. Let somebody else take the risk. Ain't going to happen. So you need to plan ahead to have some cash on hand that's going to get you started. And I am going to say that businesses, when I work with clients, what they describe to me is typically where they're going to need to be in 3 years. Things need to ramp up. You are not going to go from 0 to 10,000 a month in sales necessarily. Have we seen it done? Yes, some people have done it. But generally speaking, it takes time to ramp up. It takes time to build your customer base. It takes time and money to convert customers from inquiry to customers. Okay. So these are the things that financial data is supported with assumptions. We do research. And one other aspect of the Small Business Development Center is we have professional research librarians in Albany, similar to the capacity of our host Jennifer here, where we can delve into databases and get some marketing research. I use them in tandem. I use the library here along with our marketing research librarians to help us really dig out the facts and get the supportive research that we need. So these things, it's another reason to come to the SBDC. Not everybody can handle these projections, especially if they don't know Excel or in what format the bank needs them. So that's the business planning. The components included an executive summary, the comprehensive description, the analysis of your customer profile, so market analysis, competitive analysis, who's out there doing what you're doing and how are you going to do it better? And probably the next one is the most important, and I think everybody in my team would agree that a SWOT analysis, that's strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You need to look at this honestly in the mirror and figure out, what am I really good at? What do I stink at? Okay. What are the opportunities that are out there and what are the threats against it? So the SWOT analysis should be included. Information about your product or service, the objectives, what are the quantitative revenue targets, your marketing and sales strategy, how are you going to get to those numbers? So if you say, I'm going to make $300,000 in my first year, what does the marketing strategy and sales strategy say on how you're going to do that? The financials include your balance sheet, projected balance sheet income statement, cash flow, income statement, projected income statement, and sources and uses. So that's a lot, right? Do you really want to go it alone, or do you want tools? So here's the tool, EntreSkills. It's going to help you with all of that. Everything that's in this platform is there not only to show you how, but also to give you the tool to actually work on it in this platform. And if you don't like the first business idea, you can wipe everything out and start over with a new idea. The other thing is your plan absolutely needs to include a digital plan. Don't think about starting a business without having some type of online digital format. You need to be in places where people are now looking. From the Small Business Administration, they say that 64% of all businesses still do not have a website. Can you imagine that in this day and age, 21st century, that a business would dare to start up without a website? And there's so many platforms now. You've got Wix, you've got eDirect Host, who was a client, by the way. You've got, GoDaddy. You've got, even with Square and Etsy and all of the different, they're now adding this point and click, make your own website with online payment processing and so on. 50% of the businesses with no website suffered critical losses or went out of business during this 2020 pandemic because they didn't have the money to do it. They didn't plan ahead for it. And people just said, well, I just use my Facebook page. Really? You think that's going to cut it for you? It's not. You need to have a digital presence in a way that's going to be significant. You need your website. You need to have specific social media based on, not just go out and do them all, but based on who is your target market? Who is the customer you're trying to target? If it's going to be clothing for 20 to 28-year-olds, you want to be on Instagram, right? Or TikTok. If you want to hit baby boomers like myself, they're all still on Facebook, threatening to get off, but they're all on Facebook, you know? The email campaign strategy, you need to directly communicate every single week with your customers as they build. You need to have a blog or a video vlog, maybe a podcast. Podcasts have really come along hugely. And what do? They use YouTube to advertise the podcast that links you to the podcast that can link you to the website. And more importantly, you need online payment processing. Anybody that doesn't have a way for people to pay you online, even if it's just curbside pickup, you may not be shipping. You've got to have that. In a pandemic, in a hurricane, in a tornado, when your building burns down, when somebody drives a car through the front window of your bakery, what are you going to do? You need to be online, because even though your brick and mortar might be down, you can still sell. And your plan, you're going to go to your plan and say, in this situation, here's what I'm going to do. Planning, planning, planning. You need to be in front of the customer. You've got a lot of competition. And if you haven't delivered what they need, the way they need it, and the way they need it from you, you're not going to succeed. And that's not me being pessimistic. That's a realistic, in your face, you've got to do this right or don't do it. So financing, I know we're over an hour, so I'm going to flip through these. Like I said, I could spend an entire day talking on this topic. Understanding the process. So when we look for a source of funding, there's traditional banks. We now have non-traditional like Betterfin, Kiva, LendingTree, Cabbage. Crowdfunding has been huge. I have a client that raised $64,000 because they wanted to get into commercial property, but they very smartly built a huge network of people that were vegan. He's called the Vegan Butcher, and he produces wonderful product that people pay for online and they curbside pick up. Now he's got the money to open up his first brick and mortar store. Crowdfunding is a very real opportunity, but it's not easy. You've got to really educate yourself on how to launch. So with any of these, in a lot of places, you need to have your business plan, your projections, a list of collateral. So if you're buying equipment with that particular funding, they're going to want to see the purchase orders and things like that. Personal documents, your resume, what's your background? What is the likelihood that you know how to run a business? These are all things that are very important when you approach a funding source, and that could be New York State. And the kinds of things they're going to compare what you present. There's no doubt that there's credit issues that need to be looked at. When they think about loaning money, all right, we all have had that person in our family that constantly has their hand out, right? They need $10 for gas, or I didn't get paid this week because I didn't have a job. So could you loan me 20 bucks for groceries? You know, it gets a little old. Well, banks have criteria because we can't just be there handing out cash. They're going to look at character. They're going to look at collateral. All right. And character comes from, what you present to them in terms of maybe your resume or other things. What type of cash are you putting in? Again, you are not going to start this business without skin in the game. Your credit score. Now, the credit score typically won't get looked at unless it's 680 or above. Over 720 is best, up to 800. But work on your credit. If you're starting a business and you want this business, but you know you've got credit issues and you intend to go to a bank for funding, fix it first before you go. Don't let them be the ones to tell you that there was a problem. Go to the credit reporting agencies. You're entitled to one free full credit report. And I'm not talking about a Vantage score like Credit Karma gives you. I'm talking about a FICO score, Fair Isaac score that you need to have that the bank is going to look at. Check your credit before you go and make sure that you correct anything that looks out of whack. And then what are the conditions? You know, anybody trying to open a business and get a bank loan during a pandemic wasn't easy. I'm not going to say it was impossible if they didn't do it, but you got to look at the conditions around you. Are there legislative restrictions? Have I got the right, atmosphere? Is there a need for what I'm doing? These are considerations. So bank loans, they're giving you other people's money. So when I go and put money in my savings account, the bank is turning around and loaning it to someone for a car, a house, a business loan, a line of credit. That's my money. And they're getting it back with interest so they can make some money and give me my money back. So understand, it's not free money. There's no tree in the back of the bank where they just go out and pick off the money to give to you. Be respectful. This is a bank in business operating with other people's money. The only way that banks make money is through interest and fees. I worked in banking for 7 years, and I have to tell you, it's a tough gig. It's not, there's a lot of regulatory compliance. They have a lot of rules to follow, and making that decision on whether they give you money for a business startup is a tough one. It's hard. So give them what they need to say yes. It is heavily regulated, and it's very complex with its compliance requirements. All right, again, we went through the loan documents with your business plan and all of that. It's a little bit redundant. Crowdfunding options, GoFundMe, Kickstarter. Each of them, there's more now, but there's places now where if you want to publish a book, there's a crowdfunding source for that. GoFundMe has been very popular with things like help me pay my medical bills. Kickstarter and Indiegogo have been great for business startups, so you might consider those. Kiva, let me just touch on Kiva. This is a platform where you are expected to raise a little money of yourself. They have millions of people that are willing to support a business, and you work with Kiva employees. It's kind of a crowd-funded loan program, if you will. We have information at the SBDC. We'd be happy to help you with that. Okay, non-traditional lending, Cabbage and Lending Tree, Quicken Loans, those are online. You apply online, they work with you online. Always an opportunity as well. So in summary, if you're going to open a business, you need to develop a sound idea, recognize your risk and the liability that you have, prepare for tragedy as well. Choose a proper entity that's going to protect you, your family, provide taxation optimization. Create your business concept in a sketch with your business model canvas. Articulate that canvas in a planned strategy through your business plan. Prepare for success and tragedy as well, because at some point it's going to happen. Determine your digital presence. Figure out how many platforms you need to be on, how you're going to communicate online with your customers. Secured seed funding. All right, so whether that's an investor or your bank account and working with the banks, and seek out resources to help you along the way. And I can't stress that enough. There are so many resources out there. The SBDC is there. You can call our main number. Be sure to use the NYSBDC. That's New York Small Business Development Center.org, NYSBDC. Go there, click on the tab that says make an appointment, and then we'll get your request. We'll assign it to an advisor, and we can start working with you immediately. You know, we can assess, we can do a one-time visit, we can do an ongoing. There's no limit to the number of sessions. And again, this presentation was intended to hit on the top cylinders. There's so much more we can work with you on. There's so much more we can teach you about, and would encourage you to, number one, contact us for an appointment. Number two, when you get that survey, be sure that you fill it out and get it back to us, because quite honestly, we are judged based on what we do and perform and what successes we have. So your feedback is critical, especially for you to tell us what are the future workshops that you would like us to do. And with that, if there's any questions, Jennifer, maybe we could take a few if people have time.
Yeah, if you could go back to the slide that summarizes 4 slides back. Bibiana, did you have a specific question about that?
Is it this slide?
No, actually, I was reading it. I think you were summarizing the documents different documents. And I was just looking at it, and I think one more slide. Is it? No, the one before this one. That's the one.
There we go.
That's the one. That's the one. That's the one I was looking for. Thank you. I just wanted to take a second look because it summarized everything nicely. And I was just
well, the other thing to remember is this is kind of a basic list. I always encourage people to put together a resume that really articulates your skill set. So if you have an accounting background, it'd be good for the banker to know that. If you've got a marketing background, it's good for the banker to know that. Including a resume is a great way to introduce yourself and what your experience is so that they can feel some confidence in both who you are and what your capabilities are.
Thank you so much. I mean, I myself, I don't know about anybody else on the call. I've been exploring the idea of opening my business, and I've realized I've gone a little bit back that I need to develop the idea a little bit further on exactly what it is that I want to do. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. We can help you with that. I mean, one of the presentations I do are the 8 steps to vetting ideas and how to really look at them. You know, a lot of people look at, and I used to be the executive director for the Victor Local Development. And the first year that I was in that office, in that position, we had 11 coffee shops open up. 11. And every time I'd ask them, hey, Joanne, why are you opening a coffee shop? Oh, because I always wanted to own a coffee shop. Well, we already had 5 on Main Street, which included Tim Hortons and Dunkin' Donut, but they wanted to do coffee. What's your unique selling proposition? Well, I just make a really good cup of coffee and people like me. Out of the 11, 2 survived, and they closed up within 6 months because we didn't need 11 more coffee shops. So let's develop an idea about what key people need. What do they want? How do they want it? Why do they want it from you? If you answer those 3 questions, you're off to a good start.
Can you repeat that one more time? That was really great tips, what you just said.
Yeah, so you want to understand what your customer wants, how they want it, and why they want it from you.
And why I want it. Quick question: will you be offering that course? I need the help. I don't know about anybody else. I need the help.
You know what? You should just sign up to be a client, and we can work with you one-on-one on that.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Any other questions for Gina?
Is anybody left? Did I scare them all away?
Nope, there's still people. If there's no last call for questions for Gina, the slides from her presentation, as well as the link to the YouTube video, will be sent out in the near future. So please look for that. And we hope to see you next month. Do we know what the topic is, Jan, for next month?
Yes, we do. We're going to be talking about procurement. And again, one of our own, Drake Thomas, is putting together a group of speakers, and you'll learn more about how to sell to the government and how to get yourself in the queue, and learn about our in-house program called BidLinks, which aligns you with bidding requests and what you need to do and how to get going. So as Gina said, by all means, give us a call, set up an appointment to meet with one of our advisors. You have the information in the chat section, and also you saw some stuff in the slides. As Gina mentioned, the best bet to get to us is to go to our website at nysbdc.org and click on Make an Appointment. We typically get back to people within 24 hours after making that request. And I think Gina mentioned as well that we are still operating from home base, so face-to-face meetings won't be happening for a while until things get a little bit better. But Zoom seems to be working quite well, and we can certainly use Skype and phone calls and email, and so whichever way is easiest for you to communicate, by all means. But next month will be procurement, and we're hoping to do something on social media for the following month, and then having a session on intellectual property. So stay tuned, folks, and check with us for First Wednesdays. We appreciate you joining us. And again, as Gina mentioned, please, you're going to get a survey from us. Please take a minute. It takes like 12 seconds to fill that thing out. and any recommendations you have for other subjects. So we're more than happy to listen to it. So thanks again, Gina. Great presentation. Appreciate it
Thank
very
you.
much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for attending today.
Thank you.